All right, it's no secret that when people like you, life is going to be a lot easier for you. You're going to get invited to parties, you're going to get the jobs that you want, you're going to get promoted more frequently, and life will just be a lot easier. So it begs the question, how do you become more liked and more compelling to other people? We're going to talk about compelling people today, a great book that has, funny enough, some terrible reviews online from Amazon and Goodreads and all kinds of places. And I think it's because it strikes a chord with a lot of people and talks about a lot of uncomfortable truths that we're going to get into in this video. But I want to talk about the key principles or key ideas and takeaways that I uncovered while reading this book. I organized some of them here, and that's what we're going to be diving into today. So the 5 key ideas in this book are the judging criteria, number 1, nonverbal communication, number 2, shared worldview, number 3, public speaking, number 4, and 4 behaviors that break trust, number 5. So let's get into it. So what is it that actually makes people compelling people? So there's actually a framework that we can run through, and it's weighted off of 2 different very well-known frameworks that we're going to talk about, which is the 6 universal moral virtues, as well as the big 5 personality traits. So let's get into it. So there's strength, and then there's warmth. That's what the authors outline. Everything goes back to showing or displaying levels of strength and levels of warmth. And they're both opposing ideas. And it's the people that can marry both of them simultaneously that are the most compelling people in the world and the people that are liked by everyone. We all have that one person in our friend group, in our community, in our school or church, whatever, that are the most compelling among us. So how do they become that? Well, they are always balancing that walking of the tightrope of strength and of warmth, right? Those are the people with charisma. That's essentially what we're talking about. So how do we get there? What are the principles for that? So let's break apart strength for a moment. So strength is ability plus will, right? So then we've got warmth. What is warmth? Warmth is empathy, familiarity, and love. Okay, so let's break down those 5 characteristics, if you will. So ability is anything that lets you affect the world, and will is commitment to move forward through those obstacles. That's what strength is. Then after that, we've got what is warmth. So warmth is empathy, putting oneself in the shoes of another. We have familiarity. So birds of a feather flock together. And then we have love. So there's 3 different types of love. There's a romantic love, there's attraction, and there's attachment. So people make warmth judgments within 1/10 of a second of seeing a new person. Helen Fisher talks about this as well. And that's actually where the idea of those 3 different loves come from. Attraction, where are we? Romantic, love, attraction, and attachment. So those 3 ideas are from Helen Fisher, who is a anthropologist and studies. She's the lead scientific researcher behind Match.com, Tinder, and chemistry. So she has a lot of data to work from. She definitely knows what she's talking about. And so when we break apart all of these different facets, what are we weighing it against, right? This is obviously just 2 authors come together, they write a book. Where does it actually stand up in real life? Well, it goes backwards from psychology. So we have the big 5 personality traits. So these are universal personality traits that all psychologists agree on. So there's conscientiousness. So this is basically people who are very organized, they're orderly. You think of managers and supervisors. You've got neuroticism, or the absence of neuroticism, which is anxiety, depression, being sad all the time, overwhelmed by negative emotions. Then we've got agreeableness. So people who are people pleasers and constantly thinking about the other person at their own expense most times. And then we've got extroversion. So Carl Jung talks about this, introverted, extroverted. People that get energized by being around more people or get less energy by being around a lot of people. And then there's openness. So people who are judgmental or judging others, judging themselves, versus people who are very open-minded, open to new experiences, want to try new things, are energetic and enthusiastic about being in new situations and new environments, right? So that's what strength and warmth is constantly being weighed against. But then there's also the 6 moral virtues of character. So they actually went around, and there's been a lot of studies on this, but there's, in every culture, in every place on planet Earth, humans always resort back to the same 6 moral virtues. They overlap whether or not different cultures have come into contact with each other throughout time and throughout history, right? So what are they? So you have courage, you have temperance, wisdom, justice, humanity, and transcendence. So let's just briefly talk about each. So courage is the will to act in the face of danger. Temperance is the principal exercise of self-control. And then we've got wisdom, which is intellectual competence in its highest form. And then we've got justice, which is a commitment to fairness for humanity. And then we've got humanity, which is a deep concern for people's well-being. And then we've got transcendence. So this is looking beyond the day-to-day, looking beyond the day-to-day concerns and really trying to achieve a sense that we are all connected, right? Maslow talks about this. There's actually the hierarchy of needs, and people think that it stops at self-actualization. It actually stops at self-transcendence beyond that. And those are the people that we admire, and those are compelling people. So how do we get there? So the big number one idea is what we were just talking about, which is the strength and warmth dichotomy, which is the judging criteria. So we're always going backwards from judging people based off of their character traits and then those 6 universal moral virtues, if you will. So that's the judging criteria. That's number one. But number 2 is how we actually convey that through nonverbal communication. So most people know that obviously most of what you say is beyond or how what you say is being perceived. Most of that perception is built around not what you say, but how you say it, right? So nonverbal communication, tonality is just one example of that, right? So how you call someone's name, for example, there's so many different ways that you can convey a feeling, an emotion, or some kind of nonverbal cue that triggers some kind of response in someone, just how you say their name, right? So think about tonality as being a huge underlining factor in nonverbal communication. But there's 6 that I want to highlight that are in the book. So there's space, there's posture, there's gestures, there's voice, there's beauty, and there's style. So let's dive into briefly each one of them. So with space, think of owning space. So you walk into a restaurant and there's someone who's just owning space, right? Maybe they're sitting here, they've got their arms spread across the couch, and they're just taking up space. This conveys strength, right? So people will, they're signaling through their comfort in just taking up space. They don't care how people are perceiving them. And that's attractive to other people because it shows confidence, which is a form of strength, right? So people who are afraid to take up space and they're kind of sitting in a corner and they've got their legs crossed and they're, like this, very timid, right? It's almost like you see men sit like that, like it's very feminine compared to, again, just taking up that room. So space is a big one, but getting into the next one, posture. Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot in 12 Rules for Life. So he goes back to the hierarchy of lobsters. Funny enough, I guess the evolutionary importance of this throughout time, right? So lobsters being some of the oldest creatures on Earth, they can basically sense the hierarchy of where people stand, or where lobsters stand rather, in their social status just based on their posture. And people are the same way. So we can tell if someone is confident and if someone is higher status just on how they carry themselves. So if someone's walking around, they got their shoulders back, they're feeling confident, they've got their chest exposed, they're leading with their heart. So that's someone who is conveying confidence. That's someone who is able to feel as though they don't have the weight of the world on their shoulders, right? Someone who feels small and someone who's not confident is going to be slouched all the time. They're going to have their shoulders rolled forward, and they're going to be signaling to other people that they are not in control, so they lack that strength, right? So posture is a really good way to just indicate to others that you have strength, right? So beyond posture, we have there's tilting the head. So this is there's a trade-off for tilting the head. So this is actually pretty interesting. So they did a bunch of studies on this, and it goes back to evolutionary biology as well. So you can think about exposing your neck. So when someone's talking, you want to show that you're engaged and you're listening. If they're opening up and you want to show that you're receiving what they're saying, that they're in a safe place, you want to show that you're also being vulnerable, you can tilt your head, right? Expose your neck. So someone's telling you something that's interesting or sad or being, again, very vulnerable. You can signal they're in a safe space by nodding your head and tilting your head a little bit, and exposes your neck. So why is that important? Why is that signal that? Well, if you think through evolution, if you're tilting your neck, you're actually exposing your vital organs. So it's demonstrating, it's a cue that people can pick up on, again, a nonverbal one, that you are also being vulnerable. And so tilting your head demonstrates that to people who are, if you're having a conversation with them. So beyond that, we have gestures, right? So moving deliberately. Think about someone who's flailing around and they're all excited all the time. They're running from one place to the next. I mean, just imagine you're people walking, you're having some coffee and there's all kinds of people on the street and you're watching different people walk by. And you see the same person every single morning and they're always flustered. They're moving quickly. They always look like they're late for something. That is someone who's signaling to the world that they're not in control. They're lacking that strength, right? So if you think about how you want to move as a man specifically, I've heard this before, you want to move like a lion, right? So a lion doesn't need anything from the world. They're self-sufficient. So they're going to move with intention, but they're not going to move like they're flustered and they're just flailing around and excitable, and they're not grounded, right? So gestures are really important for this, but more specifically, we're going to come back to this because this is the fifth key idea. So the fifth key idea that we're going to get into is gestures that break trust, right? So ways of signaling that you're cold, that you're the opposite of warm, which you want to avoid. But let's go beyond that first. So we're going to get into we're getting into beauty. So beauty is another one. So we admire beautiful things. There is such a thing as objective beauty. I mean, philosophers have been talking about this since the beginning of time. Aristotle, who literally came up with logic, talks about aesthetic. Freud talks about this, where the symbol of beauty is an important thing because it's basically gives us access to divinity in this world. And so things like architecture, old churches. I was in an old church just the other day, touring around an old European town, and it was almost like an ancient ruin. And there's an object beauty to it that we can all appreciate and have an affection towards. But people are the same way. We like people who make the world more beautiful. That is true. And this is a room divider, and people feel a certain way about this kind of stuff. But people who are beautiful, we all appreciate. The problem is, this is the disconnect. People who are beautiful but don't reciprocate that feeling. So when they, a beautiful girl in a summer dress, a fit, well put together man wearing something fashionable, either side of the coin, those people are adding to the object aesthetic around us. So we appreciate that. The problem is that when they don't reciprocate it, that's when we don't like them. That's when they become not compelling people. So the best way to avoid that is to smile a lot. You want to open up and be vulnerable with people. You want to show people that you're interested and that you genuinely care. You want to be conversational, approachable. If you're not, that's when beauty can actually work against you. And instead of it being strong and warm, it's actually just cold. And it works to the opposite effect, right? But then there's style, right? So style is really important as well. So there's actually a study here that talks about in the book. So it's the white lab coat study, which is it shows that people who just simply wear a white lab coat, they become more rigorous in behavior and they think more scientifically and actually have they make fewer errors and they have a sustained attention just by wearing a lab coat. So they go back to that old saying, the clothes make the man. So there's actually more truth in that than most people like to admit. And I want to talk about style for a second, because this is interesting, because you have people that say, well, right, I'm not stylish. I don't care about style. I don't want to signal anything. Fashion's dumb, whatever. The people who don't like the idea of signaling their character through style will still use style to signal that they don't care about fashion. So I'll give you an example. Someone who wears a white t-shirt and jeans every day, and they go, I don't care about style. They are using that still to demonstrate to other people that they don't care about style. That is what style and fashion is. It's just to demonstrate your beliefs and your character, right? So in an ironic way, they're still doing the thing that they're purporting not to believe in or care about. So it's kind of ironic. So don't be afraid to demonstrate through style your beliefs and your character in a positive way. Again, when people are judging you within 1/10 of a second, how warm you are and how strong you are, you want to stack the cards in your favor. The world's not fair. It is the way it is, right? So beyond style, after that, we have, is that the 6? Do we go through the 6? I think we went through the 6. Let me just double check. Style, beauty, gestures, space, posture. There's probably voice. Voice is an important one. Okay, so obviously using a lot of filler words, something I'm trying to get over, admittedly. It's tough not to do, but filler words, saying things like is one, makes sense, right? You're trying to compel people through scarcity. Number one, it's signaling that you don't know what you're talking about. So you want to be well studied in what it is that you're talking about. Otherwise, maybe just don't talk about it. But you're also coming from a frame of dead space or taking up time or taking up people's time. It's demonstrating that you don't think that you're worth paying attention to long enough to say what it is that you want to say, that you can pause and think through what you're saying before you speak. So you use filler words to demonstrate that you're not finished speaking. But when you know that you command that attention and you're a compelling person and you're likable, that people will listen, right? You don't have to use those filler words to demand constant attention, because in that pause, you're still getting that attention from what you're saying. So don't use filler words. So let's go into the third key idea here. So we have the shared worldview, which is in here. They talk about the circle, and there's a very rudimentary drawing here that's in the book that I also drew here. So it's a little stick figure standing in the circle, and this is people's worldview. You want to get inside their circle before anything. Not only is it their worldview, but it's their radius of hearing. No matter who you're talking to, whether it's public speaking, whether it's content, whether it's your friend, whether it's a girlfriend on a third or fourth date, whatever. This is demonstrating that this is an illustration that you want to get inside their circle. How do you do that? So you want to show your audience, and they say audience, but you want to show the person that you understand their worldview the same way, right? So how do you do that? You have to demonstrate with warmth first. So most people think that you want to demonstrate with strength first, which is things like credibility, right? Credentials, accolades, some kind of authority. But experts are a dime a dozen. And especially in the age of, we're in the post-trust era. We don't trust experts anymore. I mean, we're in the post-COVID-19 world, right? So, there's so many examples of that people don't care about experts. What they care about is people sharing their same worldview, because they're constantly trying to assess right away. What does this person, is what they're saying, does it make sense to me? And what is their agenda? You have to establish that immediately, or else people will not listen to you, right? So how do we actually do that? We use emotions, right? So we want to show that we have shared emotions with people. So a great marketing tactic, even on landing pages, for example, is showing people that you understand what they're frustrated with. You say, we understand that most drivers are frustrated by safety and nav systems and this, that, whatever. But you're showing them you understand the underlying emotions. So you want to highlight that before anything. But then you also want to tell stories. So stories disarm people's, it lowers the walls, if you will. So stories will lower the walls where people are not trying to set up a defense against you from being persuaded, because people don't want their minds to be changed, right? When you try to change someone's mind, they always go back to agenda and their own ego. So the best way to circumnavigate that is by telling stories. Who was it? I was reading Abraham Lincoln. He has a great, I think it's an autobiography I was reading, and it highlights a lot of his principles on leadership. And one of the biggest takeaways from that was where he's talking about stories. And he was quoted saying that most people think that he's a master storyteller, but he was saying that it's not for his love of narrative and of story that he's so in love with stories. It's because of how useful and the utility behind stories. And so he says that it's the best way to persuade the common man is by using stories. You can think through all of time, people have been using stories to change people's minds, and it's no different today. So key idea number 4, public speaking. So public speaking, if you can think of anyone that is a compelling person, a likable person, someone that has influence and power, they are all masters of public speaking in one form or another, right? So whether it's creators today who are using social media, or whether it's Martin Luther King, whether it's Abraham Lincoln, whether it's Alexander the Great, whether it's Napoleon, doesn't matter who it is, they are master storytellers, right? So I want to break apart how to think about public speakers. So I want to break down how to think about public speaking. So it says here, so there's basically 2 buckets for public speaking, how to become a better public speaker. So you want to think about managing your nerves and then managing everything else, right? So they highlight saying that this is a sensible fear. The reason that it's a sensible fear when you're public speaking is because you're not getting reactions and gestures from other people. So again, going back to that head tilt, you're not getting those nonverbal cues from the person you're speaking to, because you either on camera, you can't see the person that you're talking to on the other side of the camera. So you don't know whether you have that connection or what you're saying is landing. But also on stage, for example, the lights are in your eyes. You can't actually see the individual responses of the people you're talking to. So it's a sensible fear. So you want to understand that and then manage that and then manage everything else. And there's more in the book that we won't necessarily have time to get into now. But that's how you think about public speaking. But then I want to talk about the 5th key idea here in compelling people. So I alluded to this earlier, going back to gestures. So there's ways that you can break trust very easily just with the gestures that you're signaling. So there's 4 behaviors. So the 4 behaviors are leaning away, right? So if you're, imagine you're on a date, right? And so you're talking in the conversation, you're just kind of warming up to each other. There's a little bit of a connection. And then all of a sudden the person who's on a date across from you crosses their arms and they sit back, they lean away. And actually that's the second part, is crossing your arms. So we'll hit 2 in 1. But if someone leans away from you and crosses their arms, it's like, what is that? I mean, how does that make you feel, right? You're watching this video. I lean away, across my arms. I mean, is that warm? Is that approachable? You're literally signaling to them that you're disinterested. It's almost like, yeah, what next? Like, impress me, right? It's like there's that air of arrogance, right? So it's important to understand these principles. I'll get into the last 2 in a second, but it's important to understand these because there's also a time and a place where maybe you want to signal to someone that you're disinterested. Maybe you're negotiating. Maybe you're at a car dealership and the salesman's saying, hey, I can do this for you. I can do this for you. The MSRP is this, but I'm going to throw in da-da-da, whatever. And you go, oh, okay, interesting. And you sit back and you're kind of looking away. Like, yeah, okay. And then you can use it tactfully because at the end of the day, the person who cares least in a negotiation is the one who has the most power, right? So you can use all of these for good and bad when you understand them. And so after that, we've got touching. Specifically, we've got touching or rubbing or grasping your hands together. So, I mean, think about how sort of gross it feels if someone's telling you, say again, going back to a salesperson, they say, yeah, so the investment today is XYZ, right? Like, how gross does that feel? They're like rubbing their hands, like cash together. So that puts people off. It breaks trust. So these are gestures to be really conscious of, because people just do it when they're nervous too. They do it for all kinds of different reasons, but you want to be conscious of what you're signaling with your body language, right? So after that, we've got touching your face as well, or touching your stomach. Like if you're constantly just like fixing your shirt, you look uncomfortable, you're uneasy, that's a bad signal. If you're touching your, it says other body parts in the book. So, I mean, it could be anything. You're constantly just kind of like, I don't know, fixing and adjusting yourself. You're touching your face, you're kind of going like this, you're doing this, right? It's like, what does that feel like being on the receiving end, right? So you want to be careful with those 4 ways of signaling distrust or breaking trust in conversation or on a public stage or whatever it is. But those are the 5 key ideas from Compelling People. 10 out of 10 book. Really enjoy it. Don't let the reviews turn you off from this book. Again, these are very debatable and polarizing points that they make in the book. There's all kinds on gender that people get really upset about, how certain rules apply for men that don't apply for women and vice versa. And people think it's barbaric, but it's going backwards from tried and true evolutionary psychology. So there's all kinds of great examples in here, from Helen Fisher to David Buss to all these very accredited authors and researchers and scientists. And they do make people feel uncomfortable because, again, we want to think about these things as a description, not a prescription. So just because it is true and that's how most people unconsciously think, doesn't mean that that's how we want to think. It's not the standard to apply to. So I always kind of want to think about things, especially in this kind of space when you're talking about influence and power, evolutionary psychology, all these things. You want to think about it through the lens of being aware and not necessarily using them for manipulation tactics. So another way to think about it is Robert Cialdini talks about this, or even Robert Greene talks about this in 48 Laws of Power. But it's understanding these principles so that you can see when people are trying to use them against you, right? Number one, so you want to arm yourself so you can kind of protect yourself and you can see what other people are doing to manipulate you. But then also absolutely become, in this case, a more compelling person so you can get more of what you want in a life and have less friction. I mean, you deserve to have a better job. You deserve to fall in love with the person of your dreams. You deserve all of these things. And it's hard to get if you're not a compelling person, and if these things don't necessarily come naturally. They didn't for me. And if they don't necessarily come, or all come naturally to you either, then these are things to think about. Style was a big one for me. Gestures were another big one for me. So there's always something in here, these gold nuggets we can take away, eat the meat and spit out the bones. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and 10 out of 10 recommend this book. If you haven't read it, then definitely give it a read, and looking forward to seeing